Callen Show, brought to you by Audible. And if you go to audiblepodcast.com/BCS, you can download a free book.
Do you use Audible, Tim?
I do. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I just downloaded my favorite audiobook of all time.
Which is?
The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman.
The Graveyard Book.
Not only is he one of the most incredible writers, but his voice performance is...
So he narrates his own book?
Otherworldly. The guy's amazing.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, so The Graveyard Book. That's
man.
on my list, man.
Oh, man.
What's it about?
I've converted so many pure nonfiction writers to fiction by using that as my gateway drug.
Really?
Yeah, it's about a, I don't want to spoil the story, but it starts with a live human boy who's raised in a graveyard. And there's a lot of back plot. It sounds morbid, it's not. It's hysterical, but it's just an incredible performance by Neil Gaiman.
Well, there it is on Audible. That's like, have you ever read The Power of One, Bryce Courtney?
I haven't.
A kid who learns how to box in prison. And it's kind of a similar thing. My favorite book, my gateway book to people who don't like fiction is either Lolita or Blood Meridian by Cormac McCarthy. Because you want to see how the English language is spoken. Yeah. It's nothing short of... It's kind of a revolutionary. It changes your whole notion of the power of words.
Blood Meridian.
It's Cormac McCarthy's masterpiece. In some ways, I've heard other authors who I respect say it's one of the greatest feats of language in the past 50 years.
Wow,
yeah.
I'll read that.
Yeah,
I've got another one for you.
Yeah.
I gotta throw one more out there.
Please.
Because if my mom and my brother both recommend a book to me, they never recommend books to me. But if they both recommend the same book, that's like the stars aligning. It never happens.
Right.
It's called Motherless Brooklyn. This is by Jonathan Lethem.
All about Motherless Brooklyn.
Detective with Tourette syndrome.
It's a great book.
Oh, yeah.
So go to audiblepodcast.com/BCS. You can download a free book.
We're drinking green tea, and I'm drinking green tea. I've always drank green tea, but I usually drink coffee, and now I'm back to green tea because I just read in the 4-Hour Cookbook that green tea has anti-tumor growth properties. I guess it starves the tumor of its blood, from what I understand. Yeah,
so you can combine. This is actually based on some research out of the Angiogenesis Foundation, and William Lee gave a presentation at TED.
Yeah, by the way, it's a great lecture which I listened to. How to Starve a Tumor, I think it's called. How to Starve a Tumor,
and it talks about how certain compounds, including green tea, and you can combine a number of sort of over-the-counter green teas and white teas and whatnot, selectively inhibit capillary growth that feeds tumors, which is like the coolest concept ever. And of course, as an athlete, I'm like, that's great, but is it going to inhibit capillary growth in muscle tissue? And he goes, no. That's the wild thing, is that it's extremely selective to cancers. And if cancers can't get blood, they can't get oxygen. Can't get oxygen, they can't grow. So maybe that's one of the reasons that if you look at Japan, especially in Okinawa, these are these blue zones where people live forever. There are probably a lot of factors, but like breast cancer, for example, in Japan until very recently was way below. Those rates were way below Western women. Yeah. So there are. So for the 4-Hour Chef, I actually went to Okinawa as part of research, and I'd never been before. It's an incredible place. It's like a Polynesian Japan, and went so far as to hire a driver and go to Ogimi, which is the village in Okinawa that has the highest average lifespans, and to just watch what everyone was doing. I wanted to see what they were doing. And there were a handful, or not doing, which is often, I think, neglected. They look for the magic, let's say, fermented turmeric tea, which they drink a lot of, or they look for the green tea. But the question I always ask is, what are they not doing? Right? Like, what are the best people in a given field, or in this case? Can I guess? Yeah. My guess is they're not overeating. They have a saying in Japan, I think, which is essentially you eat just enough. I think, and they have very strong communities. Yeah. And they live. And they always have something to live for. But I mean, I don't want to. But tell me, that's what I've read. And I'll tell you. Well, that's me trying to impress Tim Ferris. Who I have to say, I'm so excited to have. I've had a lot of great people on this podcast. You are for me the most exciting. I've read all your books, and we're going to get into it. Keep going. I appreciate that. I wouldn't have expected it myself. So that you nailed the last one. They don't retire. They never retire. From what I've seen, unless they're absolutely incapacitated. Right. Our driver was 85 and still like had more energy than we did.
Wow.
And so people are out gardening, they're out planting, they're out doing things in the community. They're constantly active. Number one, they don't overeat. This is true, but they actually consume. They have this reputation as vegetarians or only eating seafood. It's not true at all. They actually eat a lot of pork and a lot of pork fat. However, the one thing you don't get at a traditional Okinawan meal, at least from what I've seen, is rice. You don't get rice. Wow. They have purple sweet potatoes, so they don't have...
So they're not eating foods that create... the
strong insulin response.
Right.
Exactly.
There's not a lot of high glucose levels and things like that. It's slower to break down. Slow carb, which is what you talk about in your book.
Yeah, exactly. So that really...
That's interesting. I would have thought rice, but there is not a lot of rice.
Very little. Yeah, we noticed it after a few meals. We're like... There's no rice.
You know, in The Outliers, Malcolm Gladwell opens his book with a case study of a town called Rosetta, which is this town. There was a town, and I think it was in Rosetta, Italy, which was, I think, in the north of Italy. And when the rock quarries dried up, there was no more rock to mine or marble. The economy went down, and these people moved to Pennsylvania and formed their own community called Rosetta, and churches and stuff like that. They all spoke the similar dialect of Italian. This is in the 50s, where heart disease was epidemic in the United States, and a number of doctors were trying to figure out what to do about it. I mean, they would open these soldiers up when they were dead in World War II, and they were 21, and half their arteries were clogged. What was going on? It was obviously diet. It was a lot of things. However, so there were these conferences on heart disease and how to stop it, and this was the beginning of it. But Rosetta, there was a doctor there who had been working in that community for 20 years or whatever, and I think it was in the 70s or 60s at this point, and he said, these people in Rosetta are not even eating their traditional olive oil. They're cooking with lard. A lot of them are very overweight, and I'm seeing no heart disease. In fact, they're all dying of old age, and it didn't make any sense. And what they found was that their sense of community, their communal support for each other, their purpose, all of them felt they had a purpose in the community, was probably the only thing they could isolate. They figured maybe they come from a very genetically hardy stock. The problem was they took a look at the other immigrants from Rosetta in other towns in the United States, and they were dying at the same rate. It was just in this one area. Yeah. Well, they had to start rethinking health, not just in graphs, not just as a human being this biological machine, but an emotional machine. Emotions made a very big difference in how they studied nuns, and those nuns that had a very positive outlook on life and an excited outlook lived to in their 90s. The others did not. So there's no question, it seems, that a strong community and a purpose has as much to do with health, it seems to me, as does good diet, right?
Oh yeah, and I mean, if you wanted to take it even further, I've thought a little bit about this. If you consider the brain an organ, and you assume that the separation of mind and body is totally artificial, they are one and the same, right? You could even take it so far as to say that certain types of thoughts are like taking certain types of drugs that help you or drugs that hurt you. And so you see people who are going through extremely stressful periods, and they start to put on, let's say as men, more abdominal fat because they're secreting more cortisol, and all of their thoughts and thought processes or anxieties are producing like biochemical changes in their bodies. Right?
You know what I love about you and what I love about your books is you make me feel so positive about the world. Even when reading The 4-Hour Chef, I was so excited to get into it because I wore out the 4-hour work week and I wore out the 4-hour body. I heard you talking on TED, and I was immediately, I was like, whatever with this guy. I mean, I love the way you spoke, but I was a little too transfixed by the way you were kind of describing things. I was probably a little jealous that I wasn't doing this, even though I love what I do. And I got into the book, and one of the things you talk about in The 4-Hour Chef is about voting with you. You remind us that Michael Pollan talks about you can vote 3 times a day with your plate, but you talk about 20 million. Getting 20 million people to change their eating habits is the tipping point. And you're such an optimist about actually trying. It feels like to me one of the things I love about your books is that you're really trying to make a difference and change something. It's not ambition. I just always see something inside of you that is I feel like I'm so excited because I feel like you're really trying to. It's such an ambitious project, but you're really trying to change the collective conscious. It feels like. I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth.
No, you're not. I mean, I feel like I've been given a very incredible opportunity with this accidental career that I've ended up with as a writer. And I always wanted to be a teacher. I thought I was going to be a 9th or 10th grade teacher because I saw how that was the either inflection point or downward spiral for so many kids. And it could have been for me, and I just had the luck of the draw in a lot of respects to have the right coaches, the right teachers at the right time. And so I always thought I was going to go back and teach 9th and 10th grade at some point, and it just ended up that my means of teaching is through these books, which was never intended. I never thought I was going to write. But with that, I feel, and this is what I say to some of my friends who've started, let's say, blogging a few years ago, now have really big audiences, and I'm like, with great audience comes great responsibility,
right.
And it's like you can create a mob that wreaks havoc and negativity and causes a lot of damage, or you can try to harness this megaphone that you've been given to do something really constructive. And I suppose what I've realized, especially with the unexpected success of the 4-Hour Workweek, because it was turned down by 27 publishers, and they bought it for extremely low price, had 12,000 copy initial print run, and boom, due to many factors, unexpected factors, things outside of my control. It's in 40 languages, it's all over the place. And you can hit that 20 million point. Like, you absolutely can, especially with the tools that are available. So the way that I was thinking with the 4-Hour Chef, which is really a book about accelerated learning of all things, chess, sports, musical instruments, languages, whatever, but using cooking is telling the story that if I can get people who are currently uninterested in food, very interested in food, if I can make them simply change their breakfast, for instance, you can create a wave of consumer demand that totally changes the entire agricultural landscape, because you have, let's say, half of the independent farmers right now who are set to retire in the next, say, 10 years. That's going to be up for grabs for whether it's strip malls, other types of development, let's say.
You talk about crops that don't really help the ecosystem, that damage them, like soy and corn.
Right, soy, corn, wheat. So one of the large, agro companies could come in and buy it, or it could be more of these smaller producers, independent farmers. For that to happen, though, consumers need to demand those products.
Right.
So I feel as though...
But they've also got to be, and that starts with awareness.
Yeah.
I travel in this country so much, and I'm always appalled at how people eat. And not only am I appalled by the way they eat, it's a lot of it's the availability. How we've been indoctrinated to believe that the only thing that you should probably be eating is a very emotional thing for people. It's a very strange thing. We latch on to things that we know, and if you tell people the hamburger they're eating or whatever it might be is not necessarily as good for them as something else, they shut down. Their body language changes. It's an interesting thing.
That's why if you're dealing with, and I had the opportunity, fortunately, to work with, to interact with a lot of my readers who in some cases have, 200, 300 pounds to lose. Not always. I mean, those are the outliers. But what I've found is that the way you have to understand behavioral change in general first before you can get someone to vote a particular way, to eat a particular way, to train a particular way, to speak a certain way. You have to understand just behavioral change in general. And I think one of the key takeaways, if you look at a lot of the research from the Stanford Persuasion Lab, BJ Fogg, other people, is that you have to trick people into doing something really small first. And so, for instance, when I have someone who's extremely overweight, like you said, and this is true for a lot of behaviors, smoking or otherwise, they have an emotional attachment to certain behaviors and they become very defensive.
Right.
So rather than say you can't have your hamburger, I'm like, you can have your hamburger for now, but I just want you to have 30 grams of protein within 30 minutes of waking up.
You give them a small victory, something they can win.
Yeah, I'm going to add in something really small that will show them measurable results. Right? Like my dad lost well over 100 pounds of fat, but we didn't start with putting him in the gym. We didn't start with changing his meals. I started with getting him to have a protein shake first thing in the morning, and he went from 5 pounds of monthly fat loss on average to 17.85 in the first month.
Why is that? You talk about that. Is that if you could prescribe a breakfast to America?
Yeah.
and you were the emperor, what would you have people eat?
If I were the emperor of the United States of Ferris, I would.
The United States of Ferris. This is ambition.
I would have people eat 2 or 3 whole eggs. How they cook it's up to them. Well sourced, right? So not battery farmed chicken.
Free range, whatever.
Right. So 2 or 3 whole eggs, definitely not just egg whites. Then lentils and spinach. That's it.
That's it.
And how they cook that stuff is up to them.
And that would be your 30 grams of protein?
That'd get you 30 grams, for sure.
Because you're including the lentils in there?
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be Mario Batali to do this. I mean, you could, when I started eating this particular type of breakfast, I was microwaving eggs, microwaving my frozen spinach, and then eating lentils out of a can. Now, these days, I do it slightly differently. Usually I'll just, saute it really quickly and it takes the same amount of time. But that's the breakfast.
It's funny when you say saute, I actually don't even know what that means.
Exactly.
I'm reading your book. And you break it down. And we're going to talk about this. I love how you deconstruct learning so well.
And also just giving something they can hook to. Like the French in cooking made me nuts. And you pick up a cookbook and it's like, all right, first you want to blanch this and then take a scant teaspoon of that. And you're like, what the hell does any of this
Well, you said it. You said, you were more interested in why people put cooking books down.
Yeah.
Not, everybody's going to pick it up for a second, but then they put it down because there are so many different, it just seems overwhelming. And you did a poll on why people do it. Too many knives and
too many ingredients, too much cleanup, all this stuff. And if you want to be a good teacher, and I think the best way to become a world-class student is to study good teachers. Because if you can't teach something, like if you take anyone who's really the best at what they do, they can explain it to a 3rd grader. And if they can't, they don't really understand it.
That's interesting. Yeah. They said Einstein could do that. They said Einstein was able to explain the theory of relativity and what gravity really was to a 3rd grader. It's exactly what they said. He was able to deconstruct it so anybody could understand it.
Right.
Which was part of probably one of the reasons he was such a part of the zeitgeist. Still such a part. Somebody would talk about.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I mean, if you
we
look
all feel like we understand him a little bit,
Oh, very approachable. Yeah. And I think that to make skills approachable, you have to make them simple and you have to remove the fear. And so, for instance, doing the research for the 4-Hour Chef and looking at a lot of the fastest learners or best learners and performers in the world, like Josh Waitzkin, right? Yeah. Chess player.
Which, by the way, another book you guys should, The Art of Learning, which I've talked about many times on the podcast.
Yeah. So Josh and I have gotten to know each other really well, and he learned chess in reverse. Basically, his first coach didn't start him with openings. He started him with king and pawn versus pawn on the other side to teach him using very few pieces, right, avoiding overwhelm, basic principles that could apply to any chess circumstance. And you could apply that to tango. Like I learned the female role in tango before I learned the male role, so I was able to go from ground zero to the world championships in 5.5 months. And a lot of it had to do with doing things in reverse. But the point I was going to make is just like with the cooking, where you ask, like, why have I quit cooking before, or why have I put off cooking before, and then you just try to remove all of those answers from how you approach it. So, for instance, like I couldn't swim until 3 years ago. I grew up on Long Island, for God's sake, and it was always this extremely embarrassing problem for me. Yeah. And I created all of these stories, these narratives to explain it. Like, I'm a wrestler, I'm dense, I don't have a lot of body fat, I sink, and this, that, and the other thing, but I couldn't swim. And I looked at the reasons, when I started trying to apply sort of techniques from Josh and other athletes and whatnot to swimming. I was like, all right, well, why have I failed before? It's because I was forced to use kickboards by coaches who would try to teach me, and I'd kick and I wouldn't move around, and I'd be embarrassed and exhausted, so I'd quit. So kicking and then...
By the way, that is funny you said it, because that's one of the more humiliating. Somebody gave you a kickboard and told you to kick around in a pool, and you're an adult.
Yeah.
Just the image of that.
Oh, I know.
I mean, if you
don't
somebody,
move, and if you're not moving,
and you're not moving,
it's terrible.
Yeah, and I read. Keep going.
so that's just like insult to injury right there. And then secondly, trying to learn how to breathe when you're swimming, when you don't even know the technique of swimming to start with, had always caused me to quit, because I would panic. And so I asked myself, well, what if I had to learn to swim without kicking and without breathing? What would I do? Turns out, like, you look at the Paralympics. Okay, well, they're people without legs. Clearly, they're not kicking. And then secondly, asking these questions led me to to find a technique called total immersion. And then within 10 days, I went from not being able to swim 2 laps to doing 20, 30, 40 laps a session and finding it relaxing. That's nuts. And it took about 10 days to get there because I started with the failure points.
Right. Well, that's what you start the book with how you deconstruct, and you use examples of how you learn Japanese with a judo manual, or how you learn how to swim with this total immersion technique, which so much of this stuff is unorthodox. So much of this stuff is exactly the opposite of how mainstream people teach. You've always kind of, like, in all your books, it's always sort of like, I think you mentioned Oscar Wilde. Anything popular is probably wrong, or at least there's a better way. Mark Twain was a contrarian as well. These sort of iconoclasts. Those are the people that you take your learning from, and you talk about you talk about failure points and margin of safety. And I wanted to talk to you about that because you talk about meta learning and what you call DISSS and CAFE, which is these how you deconstruct learning. I'm fascinated with it because I'm learning jiu-jitsu all over again with somebody who's been doing this for me.
Cool.
And it's changed my whole game.
Awesome. So actually, well, you asked me who was on the back of the book. So I have this really young a photograph of a very young Jigoro Kano, who's the founder of judo. The margin of safety. I want to talk about that principle because it's really important. But there is one jiu-jitsu teacher who makes an appearance in this book, also Dave Camarillo, who's a grappling coach at AKA for a long period of time, trained Cain Velasquez, Mike Swick, Josh Koscheck, etc. And his students are uniformly difficult to deal with. And I was shocked by that because I'm not going to mention names, but I came from another school where there were some amazing standout students, there were some not so standout students, but it was really erratic, and everybody seemed to have a different style. And then you went to Dave's class, and I found them all uniformly a pain in the ass, like really tiring to deal with. And it was because he had a logical progression. It wasn't like, today we're going to do this random technique, tomorrow we're going to do this random technique. He had a system, right?
It's like building a house.
It's like building a house. And then and so the margin of safety, or the margin of error concept. Let's just take cooking as an example. All right, so identify the reasons you might fail. Like too many ingredients. Okay, fine. Like I'm going to limit it to 4 fewer ingredients. Okay, knife skills. I'm not going to use a knife. Like, I'll just have to choose recipes that don't use knives. Like I don't have to chop things. Okay, fine. No cleanup. Okay, fine. It's like you're going to use 1 pan. That's it.
Right.
Or whatever. And disposable plates. The next thing you want to ask is, all right, well, within all the techniques that I could possibly learn, which ones, am I allowed to curse on this? Is this G-rated? From Long Island. It's hard for me to keep it contained. It's like, which techniques can I fuck up the worst and still end up with a good result? Right. So, and that, the margin of safety is borrowed from Warren Buffett, arguably the most successful investor of the last century, because he chooses companies that are idiot-proof to run, that he can buy at a discount. So even if the outcome is mediocre, he gets fantastic return. Right? And you can apply that to, for instance, if you ask chefs, which I did, if you could only take 3 cooking techniques to a desert island, you could only use this for the rest of your life, what would they be? And so they'll typically say grilling, braising. And so grilling, everybody knows. Braising is where you slow cook stuff for a long time in a pot. And then sautéing. And sautéing is like, if you think stir fry, that's kind of a sauté.
Okay, that's a sauté.
And sauté actually means to jump in French. So it's like when people make the food jump in the pan, that's sautéing. And then you ask, all right, that's fine. Like those are probably 3 flexible techniques I should learn out of the million techniques I could. But like, which one has the highest margin of safety? Braising. You can forget about food you're cooking for a half-hour braising, and it's still amazing. Right. You can't do that with the other 2. You grill something for a half hour too long, shoe leather, not going to be good. So what does that mean? That means the first recipes that you should learn should be braising. They shouldn't use knives, and they should use really few ingredients. And boom, once you have like 2 or 3 of those that you hit home runs on, now you're like, cooking isn't intimidating. I can actually cook. Okay, and then you have the confidence to tackle
So you give yourself these mini victories. You start with things that you're going to win at that aren't impossible. You talk about level of difficulty, I think, where it's just like something is way too hard and versus,
and you can
scale it.
Yeah, and you can take something, like I failed at Spanish in school when it was mandatory for me, just like a lot of people, I think, and concluded like, I'm bad at languages, like whatever, that's fine. I'm good at other stuff, bad at languages. And it just turned out that the method was antiquated. I mean, it was this traditional kind of rote memorization.
I remember it very well because I'm relearning French now.
Yeah.
I'm trying to use a lot of it in my act just because I got a lot of ideas for it. But
yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah.
When you were working on the material. I enjoyed that. Oh, yeah.
And I, this is such a fun process for me. We were talking a little bit about, just in the danger zone here where you're learning.
Yeah.
Where you're learning, and I'm glad you saw, Tim came to my show in San Francisco, and I'm rewriting. I'm going to shoot a new special in September, so I'm just trying a bunch of new stuff. And I knew you would appreciate sort of the what jazz musicians call swinging, which is where you're just going out there. You're trying to stay thematic. Yeah. You're not sure if you're going to make it back, and the audience is kind of losing you, and then you got to get it back. That's always really fun. Like talk about killing a whale. There's not even a joke. It's just a stupid story. But yesterday I just wrote literally the whale is just an excuse to do a lot of silly stuff, and I wrote a bunch of funny stuff around it. And that's kind of what's so fun about the process of
the Swedish commentary was my favorite part of the whale. And they're like, I might have seen you, and
I just go through my whole life, and it's so obnoxious. Like it's literally all clearly about me and not about describing my legs.
But the reason the reason. One of the many reasons I've been a fan of stand-up for a really long time. I remember my mom. I have a cool mom, and she used to watch Richard Pryor and Carlin when I was a kid, and just the ability to get up there and test out the material and actually enjoy the process of sort of losing it, getting it back, and refining it. It's the same thing with learning, let's say, Spanish, right? So you give somebody a couple of tools. Like we were talking before we started recording, it's like if somebody wants you to go kill it, right?
Right.
It's like you have the toolkit where you can kill it, right? And just
meaning like if you really want to make a bunch of people laugh, you have to understand that killing stand-up means.
Yeah, and so with Spanish, if I'm like, all right, I tell you what, I'm going to give you, because I then was forced for a lot of reasons to learn Japanese, sink or swim as an exchange student, and I was like, well, I'm bad at languages. How the hell am I going to learn Japanese?
Right, that's crazy, by the way.
And it turned out I realized, well, wait a second. What I'm most interested in is the judo, and the grammar is the same. The grammar is the same in a judo textbook as in a novel, as in spoken language. It's just the vocabulary that's different.
This was so fascinating that you learned Japanese by studying old judo manuals. That's almost like that should just be the end of the book. Right?
Yeah, well, and the key to take away from that is that you're not, like, if you don't read newspapers, if you don't read the Financial Times in English, why the hell would you use it to learn Italian, French, or Spanish, right? Exactly. So you take something you're interested in. I'm like, well, I actually wanted to get better at, like, ipponseo inage, or, like, groundwork or chokes or whatever. It's like, I had to read these books. It's like, okay, well, I better figure out the grammar. And then I used comic books for a lot of the slang and stuff. But when I revisited Spanish later, I realized, like, you can open up almost all of the verbs of Spanish just by learning somewhere between 4 and 8 verbs. That's it. You learn how to conjugate them in an afternoon. So I'll tell you exactly what it is.
Well, this is what I love about you. You said you can learn 2.5% of the words in Spanish and understand 95% of Spanish.
Oh, yeah. I'll tell people exactly what to do. So if you went to get the original recordings of a guy named Michel Thomas, Michel Thomas. He was an intelligence officer in World War II, Holocaust survivor, then intelligence officer, then moved to LA and became famous for teaching actors and actresses languages for roles. And his original recordings where he's teaching 2 students live, and you're basically the third student as you listen to them. There's no writing, no homework, no nothing. You just listen to these CDs. For Spanish, German, might even have French as well. He's outstanding, and he basically gives you he gives you these like 6 to 8 verbs, and then you can just tag anything else on the end. So it's like, I want to eat, I need to eat, I would like to eat, I have to eat. And as soon as you can tag on to eat, to go, to read, to demand, whatever, then you don't have to conjugate any of it. Anyway, like, I don't want to...
Well, that's interesting. Yeah. So, and the same thing with French. What do you think of Rosetta Stone?
I am, apparently, I got a call from Newsweek for an interview. I'm apparently listed as a detractor of Rosetta Stone on their Wikipedia page.
That's what I ask you.
Yeah, so I'm not a big fan, and I'll tell you why. I don't know if you've ever heard the expression, you never ask a barber if you need a haircut, but with the Rosetta Stone system specifically, they should want to make themselves as obsolete as quickly as possible.
Exactly.
If they want it,
in other words, they make money by creating a large
by selling you
system.
more stuff.
More stuff. 5 levels.
Right, exactly. And it costs you, $300-$400 a kit. And I'll tell you a story. All right, so using the approach that I use with like the picking up the 6 to 8 verbs,
right.
And then
which you talk about in 4 hours.
Yeah, I go right through it, and then I also talk about, let's say, going to a site like vised.com, vis-ed.com, where you can get high frequency word cards. So you can get like the 1,000 highest frequency words for French, for Spanish, for Arabic, for whatever.
Okay.
And I went to Turkey. So I went to Turkey. I'm not planning on using Turkish all the time, but it people welcome you with open arms and will invite you into their homes to give you meals and all this stuff if you even speak a small amount of a given language. So I started playing around with Turkish.
Right.
So check this out. On my first flight, that's what I did. I focused on maybe 20 phrases and then these 6 to 8 verbs. Okay. Then I had a layover, and I think it was either Heathrow or Frankfurt, and there was a Rosetta Stone kiosk. Mm-hmm. So I went up to the Rosetta Stone kiosk. I was like, hey, do you mind if I play around with your Turkish for a bit? They're like, no, go nuts. So I was playing around with it. Skipped to level 3, which is supposed to take like 6 months,
right.
And scored 85% on the final exam.
Wow, just because you learned those 8 verbs.
8 verbs, handful of phrases, where you can, and you start, and just by doing that, you start to pick out patterns. Like, for instance,
I love this.
Like, if you say, let me think about this. Oh, what is it? So, iyi günler is like good day, like kind of thing. İyi günler, and then iyi akşamlar is like good evening.
Not
but
a bad accent, my friend.
Thank you. But what you notice then is that kokuk is, I think, child, and kokuklar, I might be getting it wrong, is children. So I realized, that lar seems to be a plural, right? So what does iyi akşamlar mean? And it turns out it means good evenings. It's plural. So it's like, okay, cool.
All of you.
Right. And so I took all of that, and literally in like an hour or two, you do not have to be a linguist to do this. And it's like, boom, I was able to save myself.
Because you figured out the sequencing, you figured out, you broke it down. I mean, this is you're kind of describing meta learning now, right?
Yeah, and I can, this is a totally learnable skill. Like, my readers have learned how to do all this stuff, and they've been able to do very similar things. So the deconstruction, what you mentioned, the dis and the cafe.
Right.
So the basic approach that I take, and I was neuroscience initially at Princeton undergrad, then
Tim's
went
a very smart guy. Part of it's when as I listen to you, it's so funny because you're like, all you have to do is go. You find this guy who what was this guy's name?
Michelle Thomas.
Yeah, Michelle Thomas, and he and I'm like, this, the guy, the way you find these people, that's the thing. And I want to go through. I want you to give the listeners 5 of your favorite websites, because it's ridiculous how you're able to your ability to find this stuff and find people.
That's
is
my
what
job.
I want to talk about.
That's my job.
You're so good at
because
it.
Because I do it so my readers
Michelle
don't
Thomas,
have to.
all right. I didn't know that, but he's clearly who I'm going to go look at.
Oh yeah, there are some really cool books out there, and
is that a guy? If I want to like accelerate my French learning.
Oh yeah,
Michelle Thomas is.
I would check him out. Is
that a book?
No, it's audio.
Okay, it's audio.
Get his original. All right, we'll come back to the other stuff. Let's talk about French for a second.
Yeah.
No. So Michelle Thomas, his original recordings, they can be sometimes hard to find. But get his original recordings where he's teaching 2 students, which is always awesome. It's like hysterical to listen to, because in every set of recordings I've heard, there's like one person who's awesome, and you're and you're like, wow, I want to be like that person, and then the other person, you're like, wow, that person's accent sucks. You're like, I can do better than that fool.
My father's that way. He's got the worst accent.
Oh, well, for my dad, like every time my dad tries to do a fake accent for any ethnicity, it sounds like a boo from The Simpsons, and I'm like, Dad, no, like that's not Irish.
I'm from France.
Right.
I'm from Italy, and now I'm from Russia. Like, my father's the same way. I'm like, dude, you got to give it up. Thank God you can bank, because I would have been really poor as a kid.
So with Michelle Thomas, you could use the VizEd flashcards for high frequency words. There's a great company called Assimil. I think it's out of France, actually. ASSIMIL, and they make different different collections.
I'm writing this down.
Oh yeah. No, I'm saving people a lot of time here. Assimil is a collection of dialogue, so they're different conversations.
Right.
And it's all dialogue based, which is a huge leg up almost over any other textbook. Then there's one more that if you're just like waiting in line at the bank or at the airport or whatever, there's a great app called Duolingo, Duolingo.
Okay.
And that's the first and only language learning startup that I'm actually an investor in. So full disclosure, but they do some amazing stuff. It was created by the computer scientist who made CAPTCHAs. If you've ever filled out a form and it's like, prove you're not a computer, like what does this word say? Mm-hmm. He created that. And
you're so and I want to get into this for a second. You are tapped in, because you live in Silicon Valley, basically. You're tapped into all these sort of innovative thinkers. I mean, we were talking about, we actually met a long time ago after I read The 4 Hour Body at a party and talked for just 10 minutes about Ray Kurzweil.
Yeah.
Who I think you were on one of the boards.
I was an advising faculty at Singularity University.
Yeah, which is, and I love that Singularity is near a great book, but I want to, can you give me, what are the 5 websites you frequent the most? And I'm sure it varies. It varies. But I want to ask you where you think we're headed. And what is the world going to look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now? I know you're not an oracle. I know it's very difficult. A lot of black swans, meaning there are a lot of events that change everything really quickly. But in your opinion...
Good book, by the way.
That's a great book. But in your opinion, what do you think... How different is this world going to be? If you listen to Ray Kurzweil, man, he's talking about some pretty wild stuff as we essentially, as machines begin to mimic human beings.
Yeah.
We're going to mesh with machines. Juan Enriquez talks about that in Homo Evolutus, a TED lecture.
Oh, yeah, that'll happen. I mean, it's already happening. I don't... So humans are really bad at predicting the future.
Yeah.
Because if you talk to anybody they're very bad at predicting the future because they underestimate the power of, say, exponential technologies, right? That's Ray Kurzweil's thing.
Yes.
To a large extent.
By the way, just very quickly, as far as the power of exponentials, let me tell you guys something. You take a piece of paper and you fold it over, and you fold it again, it again. So it's like ends meet. You can only do it 8 times. If you had a machine, you could never do it. If you had a machine that folded a piece of paper 50 times, you know how high it would reach? About 70 million miles.
Yeah.
That's 3/4 of the way to the sun.
Yeah.
Sun's 93 million miles away. That's the power of exponential.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
And people, it's very hard for the human mind to grasp the implications of, say, Moore's law as it applies to technology. So the things doubling in speed or halving in size. In any case, the people thought we'd be flying around with jetpacks 30 years ago.
Yeah.
But they could never have imagined that we would be printing things in 3D.
Yeah, well, that's
right?
amazing.
Which is like that is going to be, a lot of people are calling that the next industrial revolution.
It is.
So
because you're going to be able to transmit information and product through a computer and then essentially print out your hammer, your bicycle.
Yeah. Well, imagine when the printing gets fast enough that it effectively looks like teleportation. Right? Where you buy something and boom, like a sweater appears.
So crazy.
Perfectly custom fit to you, sitting there on a hanger for you to pick out, because the hanger was also printed at the same time.
It's so ridiculous.
Which is going to happen. It's just a matter of time. So I think that given the things that I watch, only a few areas that I think I watch very, very closely. One is physical tracking and monitoring and a lot of the health technology. So I think that
pushes us beyond our biology.
Yeah, and also just better ways of monitoring the body. So right now, most people will do their annual review. They get 1 blood test a year. If they're out of range, the doctor overreacts. If they're within range, even if they're trending in the wrong direction, it's like, you're fine, go home, see you in a year. Not a good system. I think we'll very quickly get to a point, and I'm actually involved with one company that will be coming out publicly attempting to do this, get to a point where we're wearing something that looks kind of like a nicotine patch, that tracks all of the stuff that you'd get in your annual...
Irregular cell division, all that stuff.
Or hemoglobin A1C, various types of cholesterol measurements, free testosterone versus total testosterone, thyroid, fasting glucose, all that stuff. Or I suppose it wouldn't be fasting glucose, but glucose level. Tracks that stuff 24/7. And you can basically pull out your iPhone and just check out all your stats.
Wow.
Or send it to your doctor or whatever.
Because what's interesting is that when you talk to doctors and you get a checkup, they are still in the Stone Age, man.
Yeah.
They check your HDL, your LDL, your cholesterol. They're not looking at the size of the molecules. There's this. They never talk about the inflammation as an issue when it comes to, and how to control inflammation with diet. I mean, that's just anathema. heresy in most of mainstream. I'm not trying to put down doctors who do a lot of great work, but it's these big organizations. When there's an orthodoxy, it's very difficult to get them to change. You need certain people out there. It's one of the things about your book that the 4 Hour Body, and that I thought was really interesting is you talk about the important. You talk about it in the 4 Hour Chef, getting your blood tested. Get your blood tested, man. You were low on myric acid, so I've been doing the raw
coconut oil.
Yeah, it's great. But people should get their blood tested where. For what?
I would say, well, there are a few different ways you can do it. You can certainly pay general practitioners. If it's like Blue Shield, they're just not going to do it because the sad part is there are a lot of really smart doctors out there, but if they're seeing patients for an average of 11 minutes and they have to work within the insurance reimbursement model, they just cannot do what they would like to do. So I would say the fastest way to get your blood tested is to either go to, say, oftentimes they're called like longevity clinics or something like that, or something along those lines, and simply pay them out of pocket to get a blood panel drawn up. You could go to a startup like Wellness Effects, which is available in quite a few states now. They break things down very granularly. So that's how I found out I was low in myristic acid. So rather than just getting total cholesterol, LDL, HDL, they're like, no, we're going to give you all of your like omega-3, omega-6, all of the fatty acids. So if something's off, you can actually tell what's off. So that's how I was like, I'm low in myristic acid.
Where do they draw their model from, though? Who's to say that there is a certain level that is optimal versus not optimal?
So that is a really long. That's definitely a super long conversation. But their model was quite cool, which was, all right, most people are not interested in going that deep, and the big companies aren't going to pay for it. But we're going to go around the country, find the scientists who own these tests, and license or buy those tests.
Okay.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
You could also go to, for instance, I recommend people do nutrient deficiency testing, and it's controversial, but SpectraCell was one that I used, and that's how I found I was low in selenium. And then lo and behold,
how do you feel about supplements versus whole food?
I try to go whole food whenever possible. Supplements I take as either last resort or out of convenience, say if I'm traveling.
Is there a supplement you take every day?
There are a few things I take when I'm traveling. For instance, just a side note on the selenium, that is what contributed to more than tripling my free testosterone and doubling my sperm count was fixing a selenium deficiency.
Wow, because you also talk about wearing your phone close to your...
you don't want to microwave the twins.
But so selenium, which is what?
Selenium's a trace mineral.
It's a trace mineral.
And you find people, for instance, people who abuse, say, anabolic steroids. And I mean, that's a long conversation.
You can tell I do with my shoulders and
stuff. Right. I know I could barely sit down. Shoulders are bumping me around.
I have a beautiful body. Don't worry about that. I'm wearing a sweater, but I wish you people could see this. I got to get a video experience because it really is a treat. It's a treat. I just take my shirt off and I just say thank you sometimes. I still got it. The kids still
That's why everything's free. I was wondering.
That's exactly what happens. They give me whatever I want.
But they oftentimes end up deficient in copper, for instance. You find baseball players use greenies or go pills. They used to have these just sitting in the clubhouse in bowls. Methamphetamine.
Right. Speed.
They end up deficient in like taurine and other things like this. But you can end up the same way if you're you're drinking too many energy drinks or drinking too much coffee. It can negatively affect your thyroid.
Adrenals.
Yeah, exactly. So where I was going with that though is I do whole food whenever possible because there's no way that scientists have identified all of the different interdependent cofactors in foods, which is why they get themselves into trouble sometimes. And so study will come out that's misinterpreted by journalists, which it always is. Don't believe anything you read in newspapers about science, pretty much. And they'll say beta carotene is good for your eyesight. Beta carotene is good for this, and it's extracted from natural sources like carrots. Okay, great. So why don't I, instead of eating carrots, take beta-carotene? Well, it turns out, they found out, of course, a few years later, that there's a lot of other stuff that goes along with the beta-carotene. When you take it by itself, it fucks you up pretty badly.
There you go. Well, T. Colin Campbell in the book, The China Study, I'm not a vegan, but I really like the book because he's a scientist and a credible one who talks about how the media will grab onto this idea of like grass-fed cow that creates a different oil, and now they put CLA or whatever that oil is in everything. No, that's not the way to look at it. You've got to look at it in context of the food that it's in and how it reacts with other chemicals. No, I'm just going to take omega-3 acid. I'm going to eat a shitload of that. Well, it's good for you in fish. We don't know necessarily.
If you need aquatic chicken.
That's where. God, exactly. That's exactly. That's what drives me crazy about the marketing world. And I'm a capitalist and a free market guy, but man, oh man, you've got to educate yourself, because what happens is food companies get some crappy scientific study or a study that needs to be put into context. They take it way out of context and say we're going to throw this into everything now. It drives me crazy. When fish oil was supposed to be the miracle oil, all of a sudden it's in bread.
I know exactly. I mean, I think that Michael Pollan's guideline. I've met Michael. He's a really, really smart guy. Really enjoyed the Omnivore's Dilemma, which actually influenced me to do some of the stuff in the 4-Hour Chef, like reconnecting with like foraging and hunting and things like that. And I would never consider myself.
Well, you and I
really
went hunting
with the same guy. We should talk about that.
Yeah.
But I think Pollan's general recommendation, which is like, don't eat anything your grandma wouldn't be able to either recognize or at least pronounce. You know what I mean? It's like lentils. She could figure it out. Okay, lentejas or whatever. Like, I got it. But if you're like, hey, grandma, you should take some omega-3 fatty acids, she'd be like, I don't know what language you're speaking.
My grandfather was Sicilian. If you hit him with any of that bullshit, he'd be like, he'd look at you. I remember I'd say something like, you got to start eating, I just eat meat and I only eat like spinach. I'm not eating pasta with tomato sauce. And he'd go, yeah, all right. He's 90. Cutting cheese and eating some apples. Like, look at me like, what an a-hole. Who's a fucking kid? This hippie over
You're telling me.
He would just literally, I remember he wouldn't even argue. He'd go, oh yeah? Oh yeah, okay. All right. Cutting his cheese. I came home one time, I was like, there, I read The Fit for Life or some shit, and I go, dairy's bad for you. He's cutting a wheel of provolone, fucking like from like a wheel that he had hanging in the garage, or he was an old school Sicilian. I was like, dairy's bad for you. Oh, is it? Yeah, come to my village, Shaka, in Sicily. I'll show you people who live, 100 years, you fucking yoker. Shut up, you 20-year-old, reading one book and then you know everything. Oh, it's so beautiful.
I can't wait to be. I'm slowly working my way up to a really cantankerous old man. I like it.
Me too.
It's enjoyable.
I love that. My father's the same way. My father met a friend of mine. It was the greatest thing. My father met a friend of mine, and all he did is he goes, "Hey, Mr. Callen, how you doing?" And my father's just sitting there, "Hey, how you doing?" And he goes, "I'll see you in a bit." And he walked out, and my father goes, "What's he do?" And I go, "He's a writer." And he says, "Oh yeah? I suspect that's not going to work out for him." and I go, "How'd you know that?" He goes, "Pattern recognition." He goes, "I've been around the block about 6 times. That guy's jumping around." It was so beautiful. Just knew the guy, just a glance, and knew his whole fucking life. It was. I love that. And he doesn't smile. Yeah. He's not a big smiler.
Yeah, that's grumpy old men slowly setting in.
It's called wisdom.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Also known as grumpy old men or women. Yeah. Women are even better because they just actually. So in Japan, I'll tell you something. This is really funny. I was on Japanese subway, so you always hear about the perverts on the Japanese subways. Mm-hmm. It's all crowded. The guys with the white gloves who push people in off the platforms.
Go to RedTube, guys, if you want to find out. You can see
there's
videos.
Lots of quality. Yeah. But I was on 15 years old, exchange student, in my Japanese school uniform. And I feel someone attacking my ass, like violently attacking my ass.
You got a bubble ass.
I do. I have a bubble ass, and so it's like somebody violently attacking my ass on the subway, and like it was so crowded I couldn't turn around. I'm just like,
I'm straight, but I'm a little turned on. You're 15 in a Japanese schoolboy uniform, getting your ass attacked.
This is seductive.
Yeah,
and
you guys got your hand down your pants?
Yeah, no, like over the pants, but like really. Like he was trying to tear a ball, like he's an outfielder trying to tear a ball off the ground to throw it to home plate, like just grabbing my ass, and it takes me like, I don't know, 5-10 seconds to turn around because I was so crowded. I turn around and it's this old lady, Japanese lady with a gold tooth, and not kidding. And so Japanese women, when they get past a certain age, they're called obatarian, which means old battalion, which is named after this like warship show from the 60s or something, because they just do not give a fuck about anyone. Like they will.
They can get away with anything.
Yeah, you always hear like, oh, the like the passive Japanese women, oh, they're so downtrodden. Like, not past a certain age, man, they will take no shit from anyone.
Well, my buddy Doug David, I was a comedian, says, I can't wait to turn 80.
He's hysterical.
He's great. That's one of my best friends, and he goes, I can't wait till I turn 80. I can go in there and just steal something. I'll steal some candy. What are you going to do? I'm fucking 80. You're going to take it away from me?
No,
That's
exactly.
great.
Say hi for me.
Yeah, I will.
I love his stuff.
He loves you. He wanted to know all about
really?
it. He's excited.
When he's talking about...
I was just talking to him on the way here. He just said, I want to hear about Ferris. He's a big fan.
A buddy of mine named Aaron Avery gave me one of his CDs, and I listened to it over and over and over again.
Oh,
this Pacific...
You'll love it. This is on the podcast.
Pacific Northwest road trip. Oh, man.
That was the best.
The guy in the garbage can, Captain with Ahab looking across the street. Anyway. But... I don't even know where we were. It doesn't matter. But
we were talking about the old battleships, the Japanese
the old
women who just don't give a fuck, and she was attacking your ass.
Exactly.
Decided that, that's a 15-year-old. I'm going to squeeze his ass.
Oh yeah, she's like, what are you going to do? You going to report me? Like,
that sounds like a nightmare. It sounds like one of those clown nightmares.
Oh no, what was even better is I turned around and she just started laughing and looked me right in the eye, and then her girlfriend, who was 70, was with her, just started just thought it was the funniest thing on earth. And it's hard for me. I didn't feel violated. I was just I don't even know how to process this situation.
It's the weirdest thing in the world. It's like, she probably goes, grab that guy's ass. I'm gonna.
Yeah, exactly. I dare you.
That 15-year-old in what does a Japanese schoolboy have to wear? Like a suit?
It looks like a West Point cadet outfit. It's got a high collar, very, very sedate. Although the students who were in, if you can believe this at the time, idle hands of the Devil's Workshop, right? So there were gangs and stuff, not the kind of gangs you would associate with Los Angeles, but
sure.
The bad kids would modify their school uniforms to be either really long, let's say, so breaking regulation, or really short. So they
you still see a lot of that in Japan.
You see
fashion.
Yeah, they call them chodan. Chodan are the really long ones. And the Japanese that I learned was from the judo textbooks, and then a comic book called Rokude Nashi Brusu, which is about high school gangs. And
your accent is out. I can tell it's very good. Do you speak it fluently? Japanese?
Yeah. Oh yeah, Japanese, read and write. I'm a little rusty, but then did Mandarin after that. And
Mandarin.
Yeah.
Life is too short to learn Mandarin, isn't it?
I'll tell you what the key is and this is something I learned actually mostly from college. I think I'm a good mimic.
Right.
Don't think I'm a particularly good actor, but I'm good at hearing inflection.
Acting is mimicry.
Yeah. And the best way to nail an accent is to have a page of dialogue or a page of text that you record, and then you give that to a native speaker. They listen to it and they circle your problem areas, and then you practice just those problem areas.
Right.
You have to have the one-on-one correction, but you don't want to do it in real time. You want to actually read a text and have them circle your problem areas and then work on drilling.
When I hear you talking and you deconstruct stuff, you really got to start with. My friend wrote a book called The Straight A Conspiracy, and he studied the art of learning as well. It's a good book, but he said learning starts with emotion.
Yeah.
The emotional context from which you approach something has everything to do with whether or not it's going to be easier or hard for you to learn.
Yeah.
This idea that I'm not a math person, you're never going to learn math that way.
Yeah.
You have such a love for learning, and it's so exciting. Just the way you just broke that down, just have somebody circle your problem areas. Nah, most people I'm not. It's just, but that makes a lot of sense. It just makes a lot of sense.
Oh, you could find someone on Craigslist or a site called Verbling or Live Mocha. This is something you could do for $5.
Yeah.
Maybe less.
Yeah.
You could go to a site called Fiverr, Fiverr.com, where they have a million and one things you can have done for $5.
Right.
And you could find something to do for $5.
Well, you talk about in the 4-Hour Work Week how to basically, set up a business online and start making money. How much has that model changed since you wrote that book?
It's changed quite a bit since 2007, just in terms of testing. For the principles and the general approach to testing business concepts before you invest a lot into, say, manufacturing or something like that still applies. So the general principles, like 80-20 principle, they will apply forever. The way that you would test, say, on Google AdWords versus creating a landing page on using a service called Optimizely, or Unbounce.com is another great option for that. Moves really quickly, and that's one of the weaknesses of the written format is it's fixed. But we've done. It's had more than 70 printings in the U.S. and I have still to this day, I'm updating it. So we did the updated and expanded edition in 2009, which had about 100 pages of user-generated content, meaning actual case studies of readers who've done it. Because, of course, the criticism with anything that I do is like, oh, well, that's easy for you to say. You're like a 20-something or now 30-something year old single male, easy for you to say. And which is why it's important with whether it's a 4-hour work week, it's a 4-hour body, or a 4-hour chef or anything, to be like, no, like, here's a mother of 3, single mom who lost 120 pounds or who built $1 million business or whatever.
Yeah, I hate those excuses. You have to decide who you want to be, what you want to do. And your children and your family and stuff, which I have, that's a terrible excuse. The most important thing is you want people to be proud of. You want the people close to you to be proud of what you're doing. Sometimes it takes a lot of effort. They'll understand.
Oh yeah, and you mentioned like math, right? I mean, the way you have to trick people, and I don't view this as a bad thing, into getting their foot in the door with something they're afraid of, right? Like with the swimming. It's like, okay, I want to teach you how to swim. I'm not going to teach you how to swim. Like, maybe I'll take you kiteboarding in really shallow water, right? To get you familiar, just doing something fun in the water, which you've never experienced, right? Math, you don't like math? Okay, fine. You like baseball? Great. I'm going to have you watch or read Moneyball. Now math's going to be real interesting.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or like, okay, you hate math, but you like judo?
It's got a utility that you can understand.
Yeah, exactly.
And it applies to something that you are interested in.
Yeah, there was a book ages ago. I think it was just called The Physics of Judo. So awesome. And it's like, all right, you don't like physics? I don't care. I'm going to give you, this is a book on judo. Forget about physics. It'll make you a better judo fighter. Okay, now I'm interested.
Yeah, well, Josh Waitzkin in his book talks about practicing jiu-jitsu or push hands kung fu and getting better at chess.
Yeah.
One complements the other, because all learning is sort of similar in that sense.
Well, when I was, another example in the 4-Hour Chef is basketball, because that was another thing. I'd been shamed in junior high when I tried out for this is low, the bar is low, tried out for the junior varsity basketball team.
I went through the same thing because I was a wrestler.
Oh, no, exactly.
My friends all made fun of me because I was a wrestler. I rolled around on a mat with a guy and I didn't know how to dribble a ball.
Right, and then I tried to dribble and they're like, you're dribbling like a caveman. That's what the PE teacher said to me, and I was like, oh man, this is embarrassing, and I quit, and I'm like, I'm going back to wrestling. So for the 4-Hour Chef, I was like, well, is this something I really can't do, or let me see if I can figure out how to shoot a 3-pointer. Like, I just want to try to figure it out. And went through the same exact process, found a guy named Rick Torbett who runs a company called Better Basketball. And when I reached out to him, it was funny because it turned out he designed his company on what he'd read in the 4-Hour Work Week,
oh, is that
which
right?
was really small world.
That's great.
Yeah, and this is how effective it was. Just in one DVD and an interview, gave me enough so I could go out and within a weekend was shooting 3-pointers.
Wow.
But here's the crazy transfer part, which is why people are like, I'm not interested in cooking, I'm not interested in language, I'm not interested in whatever. Once you learn to think creatively about one thing, like Josh with the push hands, it transfers to other areas. Right. That's where you really get an incredible return on investment and have a lot of fun. So when I was shooting hoops, my brother's like, hey, do you want to go out and like play some, you want to go bowling? We'd never go bowling. But he's like, you want to go bowling? So there's this really just like downtrodden, hysterically local bowling alley that we have on Long Island. We're like, sure, let's go bowling. So it's just a couple of us went out, and for the first time, I scored whatever it was, like over 200 or something like that, after working on the basketball for an afternoon.
Right, because the same principle was sort of applied.
I was thinking about it totally differently.
Yeah.
And it's just like, well, this is kind of like basketball in reverse, if you think about it, right? And
Joe's an amazing pool player.
Oh, really?
Yes, he's an amazing pool player, like a notch below pro. And when Joe and I were playing, when we were shooting, they had to see how well we shot a gun. When we were hunting with Steve Ranella. And I'd shot a little bit, so I was okay. But Joe said he first of all, he dropped his deer right away. But he also when he was target practicing, it took him a couple times just to adjust, and then he went, wow, it's just like pool. Huh. It's just the breathing is the same. The way you hold the stick is the same way you hold a gun. Yeah. And he picked it up immediately because he just applied the feel, the touch, and the principles that he learned in pool to shooting a high-powered rifle. It's beautiful. It's what Miyamoto Musashi said in the Book of Five Rings.
Oh, yeah. One of my favorites.
It's one of the great books, man.
All right. So... I'm sorry. What do you say? I get all excited.
He just said, I know. I knew that. I love you for that because he said, through one way, you learn everything.
Yeah. Okay. So for people who don't know, Miyamoto Musashi. All right, so this guy was known as the Demon Warrior in Japan, and he traveled around the country having challenge matches initially. I mean, there's a lot
with swords, by the way.
Yeah, with swords, and he became so adept that he stopped having duels using a metal sword himself. He would use bokken, or these
I didn't know that.
wooden swords. He would fight someone with a live blade with a wooden sword. And he also created a style himself where he used, I think it's
two swords, right?
wakizashi, the shorter sword, and then the long sword. So he has two swords, and which is still used by some people in kendo competition, which is amazing to see. If you see someone who actually knows how to use the two swords, it's wild. And his story is just phenomenal, because he started off as just a brute. I mean, he was like...
He was a Roman.
He was just exactly. He was just a unemployed mercenary, basically.
Because they were fiefdoms in Japan. It was basically fiefdoms with shoguns that would hire local armies to protect the fiefdom. They were always fighting.
It was like Blackwater versus Blackwater
That's right.
Blackwater.
That's right.
And but over time became this real sort of philosophical leader. And the book, the novel, Musashi, if you haven't read it, it's long as hell. It's like 900 something pages, and I bought it and it just sat there for ages because I was like, oh, the paper is like rice paper thin. I was like, this is just a long book, and I got into it and I couldn't stop. It was so good. The fight scenes and everything are so incredible. And I found out later, this book, Japan at the time had a population of about 120 million people. It had sold 100 million copies in Japanese.
Wow.
And
wow.
It's a fantastic. If any of you people hearing this are into just martial arts in general, but also like the philosophy of warfare and the strategy and whatnot, this book is incredible.
More than that. It's also, he talks about how the spirit of the thing itself reveals itself to you. He was kind of the first person to talk about 10,000 hours in a way.
Yeah.
When you practice one thing over and over again, you become one with it. Sort of. This notion that you learn everything. The universe reveals its secrets to you.
And, just to touch on the 10,000 hour rule, because when people are looking for masters or experts to emulate, so you're like, okay, I want to learn stand-up. Like, who should I model? Who should I figure it out? Who should I look to learn from? Or I want to learn how to swim. Or I want to learn how to shoot basketball. The best people to go after are oftentimes the people who are one notch below the best. Because the people who are one with their craft are oftentimes terrible at teaching it, because it's so second nature.
David Foster Wallace, in an essay called How Tracy Austin Broke My Heart, and Tracy Austin won Wimbledon at 14, he talks about how a physical genius, when they try to break down what they do into words, in a book especially, it's impossible, because part of what makes them a physical genius is their ability not to overthink and break and break down into its nuances what they're doing. It's a feel, and they get to a point where after so much practice, Andre Agassi talks about winning Wimbledon after hitting, I think, 2 million balls. That at 21 years old when he won Wimbledon, you can't necessarily break down. The only person I've ever heard do it as well is Josh Waitzkin.
I'll add some people. So Josh is definitely way up there. He's incredible. So the two examples, one by feel, one by analysis. Two masters who've broken it down, but who can actually teach by feel. This is actually a reader recommendation to me. Go on YouTube and find a video. Search the inner game of tennis.
Oh, wow!
And it's footage. It's footage from some news show, TV news show from the 70s. And look for about I think it's 12 to 20 minute long piece. And this tennis coach, I'm blanking on his name at the moment, but he takes this woman who's quite overweight, completely sedentary, non-athlete. They'd recruited a number of people to be part of an experiment. They didn't know what they were going to do, and she hates sports. She hates everything associated with physical activity. And within 20 minutes, he has her playing a live game of tennis.
Wow.
And it's incredible how he leads her into it and teaches her. He has her repeat things like boom, boom, boom, boom, boom, boom, boom, boom when he is serving, so that she doesn't overthink it.
Okay.
So rather than analyzing her technique, he has her repeat that as she's learning to serve.
Triggers.
Oh, it's fascinating.
Anchors.
So that would be one example. The second example, which I think is arguably, in my experience at least, the most perfect how-to book ever written, is Ben Hogan's The 5 Lessons.
You have that that as a recommendation.
And it's about golf.
By the way, and page 77, which I'm going to turn to in a little bit, you have the greatest list of things to learn that are so fucking useless but so awesome. It's retarded. It's so great. But so Ben Hogan's, keep going.
No, and it's about golf, and I don't even play golf. I don't particularly. It's not something I want to dedicate my life to. But he takes something that could be very overwhelming and intimidating, that could be 1,000 DVD set, and puts it into 120 pages.
Right.
And he's like, "This is what you need to know."
And that's what makes it, everything about learning, so exciting.
Yeah.
And so many people I see that are paralyzed in their life and not living the life they want to live are paralyzed because they are looking at learning as this massive mountain that they've got to get to the top to before they learn anything. Yeah. And the truth is that you can start learning within 5 minutes, which is which is one of the things that I think you've created. You've done such a service to people, with that. And here's my question before let's go through this. You're such a and I mean this in the best of ways. It's like you are a wonderful, you're so retarded about certain things that you love, you do shit, you'll write out stuff and I'll be like, that's exactly what I like. There's such a child to you as well. Ben Hogan's 5 Lessons. Then you've got how to fold a t-shirt in 2 seconds, how to juggle 3 balls, how to make a rose out of a napkin, how to throw a knife, fucking awesome, or a fork or anything sharp. I was like, what? I went to all of these, by the way. How to fold a fitted sheet and impress your mom. All the shit I think about. How to learn the first 100 signs in American Sign Language. That'll get you laid. This is the stuff that on a date, if you want to impress a girl, you can work all this shit in. Talk about game.
The napkin rose, that is a closer.
That's a closer.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this is, Picasso
She goes to the bathroom, comes back, finds a napkin rose.
Look, Picasso said man does everything for a woman. Yeah. They fight bulls, they go to war, they do it all. And you're right. How to do the blood sport kung fu coin grab. How to perform the poker card sequence. It's fucking the keys. How to peel a banana like a monkey. This is why your books are not just learning experiences. They're so much fucking fun. Only you sit around and think about this. How to make a cardboard moose head wall hanging. How many frat dudes want to learn that? Every one of them. It's fucking ridiculous.
And this, what people don't realize too, the really childlike ridiculous thing, is that I probably went through 1,000 different options to choose these, whatever it is, 24 skills 24. That you can acquire.
How to create a global phenomenon for less than $10,000. How to design $1 million business in a weekend, and then you parentheses, really. How to ski powder, 15 tips. I mean, it's unbelievable, man.
This is what, and if the way I get someone, because they see some of these books and they're like, wow, these are big books. They're intended to be choose-your-own adventure books, right? Yeah. And if I can get, I don't expect anyone to read every page of any of my books.
You wouldn't.
Yeah, I wouldn't. But it's what's beautiful, because not all of it will apply to you at that point in your life. My goal is let me try, because the worst thing to me, and I'm sure maybe this is true, I'd love to get your opinion, with stand-up too. It's like, I can't imagine. You don't need, let me just speak from my personal experience. With my books, if I try to make it appeal to everyone, I get at best an indifferent response from everyone. But if I say, you know what, I just want each reader to love 50 pages, 100 pages of my book. Right. If they ignore the rest, I don't care.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I always say stand-up. If I've got 20% of the audience looking at me like, what the fuck is this guy doing? I'm doing something right.
Yeah.
Because what I'm doing is something they haven't seen before.
Yeah.
And people ask me, I get young comics where I was like, hey, can you give me some advice? My advice, stand-up, I break stand-up down into, I always say, there are 2 rules. Is write only what you think is funny and write every day. Yeah. That I could break down, but I actually now I say I don't think you should go for what's funny. I don't try to write what's funny. I try to write what is exciting to me.
Yeah.
I write what moves me, what's going to surprise me, and I love being in that danger zone. I don't know until, in fact, yesterday, whether saving a whale and the story is going to work. I tell it on stage. I have enough energy. I've been doing it long enough. I can get you to laugh and listen to me. But until yesterday, now I'm going to what you saw is going to crush. The next time you say, just watch. Just know that I said it because I found it. And why? Because I started with something that I want to talk about saving a whale. and I got excited about the prospects that were involved in being a hero. I'm not a hero, but it did save a whale, everybody, and I make you laugh, And it starts with a premise like that, and I just that's the kind of stuff that where you can break things down that way. What do you do? Write what moves you. Write what's going to excite you, and write every day.
And so I have a question for you. Then I've just a thought related to writing processes. I think is really similar. But there was one piece of that evening's content from you that I'd never seen before in stand-up, kind of format-wise, which is when you had, Act 1, Act 2, Act 3 with. The dancing is not in my feet; it is in my heart. Like, what?
Did I do that for you?
Yeah, you did.
I wasn't even ready.
No, but I love that part. It was fucking great.
I did a Spanish danza.
Oh, it was so good. No, but just having the commentary of like looking back at the audience and being like, wait, ready? Watch what's going to happen here. Watch what happens. And like, where did that start? I mean,
it literally started from the fact that I was in Miami, one of my favorite places, and I love salsa and I love tango, and when you see someone who really knows how to dance salsa, there's almost nothing else. And it started with the fact that as I went, I spent all my time learning taekwondo and wrestling on a mat when I should have been dancing. You asshole! You want to get laid? You want to get laid? Forget the gym, you guys. Forget karate and jiu-jitsu. Go to a dance class, man. Learn totally how to dance, and you'll be probably the only straight guy in the room. Because straight guys still haven't figured out the secret that dancing is the whole deal.
Oh yeah.
And I found myself to be. I was so jealous. I would go to these salsa rooms and watch these incredible dancers. And then I said I was in Miami, and I love that I wrote a poem about it. I love the sticky air, and I love that brown caramel skin, and I love Latin culture. I love the way they are able to mix the cosmopolitan, classy sort of protocol with the tropical, visceral, sexual biology that we are. They mix those two together, and I was watching this who I ended up talking to and getting to know, this beautiful woman in a white dress who was a Cuban salsa instructor.
Oh my God.
And of course she had been to my show, and that was it. And I remember thinking, all I want to do, and I was dead serious, is I want to live in Cuba or somewhere where they speak Spanish. I want to wear linen suits, a fedora, and I want to be a Spanish dancer. That's what I want to fucking do. I want to run through the rain when I need a shower. That's what I want to do. And I want to make love to a woman named Mariela after I've been dancing with her all night. That's how I started. And when you see it, and it's when I finally am done with this, when I've written this whole chapter, because I'm in the process of writing it, I promise you I'm going to bring the house down because I'm so excited by it, because it's what I'm not trying to be funny. I'm sharing with you who I really want to be. I want to be a Delta Force commando, and I also want to be a Spanish dancer. I'm torn. I'm always torn
between those two.
I don't know who I want to be. I just want to be a
you
great
could be
dancer and a great
Cuba.
warrior. I could be deployed to Cuba. You're right. And my cover is a Spanish dancer. You just gave me an incredible premise, dude. You just gave me an incredible premise. Oh my God. You actually did.
The grand convergence. That's the singularity.
You are going to...
The comedy singularity.
That is the singularity. Listen, I don't want to take up too much. You got Joe Rogan after this. And Joe, if Joe found out I was interviewing you, he hates this because I'm stealing you and he doesn't want you to blow your load. So Joe, guess what? I'm sorry. Don't tell him that you did. He'll be mad at me. And I'm just saying this on the podcast. So Joe, if he hears it, he'll be like, you motherfucker. So I took some of your gold today. And I know he's like, I want Ferris fresh. And you'll get them fresh because you've got boundless energy, thanks to the slow-carb diet that you promote in the 4-Hour Chef. You guys buy the 4-Hour Chef, buy 4-Hour Workweek, buy the 4-Hour Body. I mean, these are just my favorite books. You do everybody a service. And in closing, I have a question. If there are 3 people you could meet in history and have a real conversation with, who would they be?
That's a great question. Okay, my 3, just not overthinking it, my 3 would be Ben Franklin.
Oh, wow.
Because he was not only an incredible communicator, but he was very creative, so he was able to not only be an amazing businessman as a publisher, but or printer rather, also diplomat, also amateur scientist, celebrated worldwide. Just the sheer breadth of his ambition and curiosity is really impressive to me. Also, just a funny character. Richard Feynman, who was a Nobel laureate in physics, also just one of the most incredible teachers I've ever seen. There's actually a wonderful video of him I have on my blog, just 4hourblog.com, or you can search it on YouTube, called the joy. I think it's the joy of finding things out.
Wow.
Yeah, so he has a great book called Surely You Must Be Joking, Mr. Feynman. But he was an amazing physicist, but an incredible teacher, and also extremely curious. I guess that's the common thread. I mean, he taught himself how to safe crack, and then he taught himself how to play the bongos, and then he wanted to figure out like pickup stuff. So he like figured that out by just running all these crazy, embarrassing experiments in clubs, and really just a brilliant, wonderful human being. And then the third, I think Mark Twain.
Mark Twain. I love you. I hear Franklin and Mark Twain a lot, and I love that. I expect nothing less. You're an impressive dude, man. You make a big difference, and this has been so exciting for me. This has been like the highlight. This is so much fun. Well, thanks so much. This is, I mean, ever since we were jamming, met at that I guess dinner/cocktail party. Yeah. I was like, we will meet again. Yeah, we will meet again. We will meet again. It's nothing will happen. Now here we are. It's fantastic. So that's our accent. So this is Bryan Callen Show.